With all the tumult in the world, I often find myself longing for the days before masks and wildfires and the sense of dread that the sins of the past will haunt our dreams of a better future. And in those moments, I go searching for the one balm for my soul that always works. Old TV shows. You know the kind I'm talking about. Three's Company, The Jeffersons, and my favorite, All in the Mishpacha. You remember All in the Mishpacha, right? I'll never forget in season 1 when Noah crashed his ark on a desert island with Ginger and Mary Ann and the professor, or that musical episode in season 6 about Joseph's pretty coat. All that nostalgia makes me wonder where our favorite characters are now. And today we're in luck because we've tracked down your favorites and mine, and they couldn't have been happier to sit down with us.
Excuse me, are you recording me? No, you're too close. You're too close. You're too close!
They certainly have stories to tell.
Okay, quiet on set. Real Housewives of Mesopotamia. Action. Hagar. Now tell us what really happened.
Oh, I'll tell you.
And some of their lives have taken surprising turns. It's not all fun and games.
Hagar, over here, Hagar. Pictures.
But this reunion special is just what the rabbi ordered. Stay tuned and join me, John Adam Ross, for today's installment of Storahtelling, where Torah meets your story, where history meets fantasy, where the page meets the stage. We bring you the same old stories with a bit of a twist, reclaiming one of the world's oldest rituals of sacred storytelling, the telling of Torah. Not always thought of as the most exciting of Jewish rituals, but that wasn't always the case. Torah time is prime time in Jewish ritual. And when it premiered in Jerusalem 2,500 years ago, it was an engaging performance with live translation from Hebrew into the language of the day. Even back then, most people didn't speak Hebrew. And there were local translators, storytellers called mavens, from the Hebrew word mavin, to understand, who were spread out amongst the crowd, translating the Torah as it was being read. Imagine the very first time this happened. Everyone was gathered at the water gate, hearing the Torah as it was brand new. It was a magical moment, just like this one. Because we are reviving the Maven method right here, right now, today, on Zoom. We're about to take out the sacred scroll and bring the story to life with 3 mavens who will lead us through their own translations of the story Jews around the world read every year on this day. And for the first time ever, Lab Shul is giving us the chance to choose our own Maven adventure. This Zoom screen is Mount Sinai, and we are the people of Israel once again waiting to receive the Torah. When she comes out, we will invite a blessing over the reading, an aliyah, a chance for you to rise, climb up the metaphysical mountain, and bless the story, the inherited story. And then the story will be chanted aloud in the original Hebrew. And you will be able to choose from 3 different Zoom rooms, 3 different voices whose perspectives will illuminate the story and connect it to today. When that moment happens, I'll be back to give you more instructions. But for now, it's time. So brighten your screens, fasten your seatbelts, turn off your cell phones, and please rise, because live from your living room, kitchen, bedroom, home office, couch, and live from Mount Sinai, it's Storahtelling, the Where Are They Now special for All in the Mishpacha.
When I first got this role of Hagar, it made me think about how Sarah and Hagar's story is a story that runs parallel to many of those who are enslaved here in the Americas, captured, forced into slavery and servitude, violence, and sexual assault. So let me tell you a story about my great-great-great-grandmother. Her name was Priscilla Francis. She was an enslaved African woman who was brought here in captivity from West Africa. We presume it was Ghana, as we still carry many Ghanaian facial features, with no way to be sure of where she came from and her life before slavery. But one thing we do know is that she was brilliant and enterprising, because upon arriving stateside, she had still retained her African dialect, learned English, and learned to read and write. So when she got here, she was sold to Tom Jackson. Now, Tom Jackson was an English businessman who maintained a family in England as well as a family on his plantation, which is something that a lot of slave owners did. Tom Jackson owned a very large rice plantation in northern Louisiana in what is now Sterlington and the Monroe Parish. The closest neighboring city is Shreveport. Now, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother is brilliant. And I mean, like, where do you think I get it from? So she had retained her African dialect, picked up English, learned to read and write. So let's just take a minute to think about that. Through the trauma of getting captured, enduring the violent Middle Passage with a month in what they call training, which is where they sent new arrivals to the harshest, most violent plantations to get them ready to go out to the plantations they were really sold to. Through all of that, she managed to hold on, cherish, and nurture who she was. That intelligent and pure adaptable magic was, of course, exploited, because when they found out she could do this, they placed her back on the ships to make the voyage to and from Africa and to the other ports, where she basically prepared the slaves for their enslavement stateside. So, in between one of those buddy voyages, Tom came to visit the plantation, and it was told to me that he was in love with her at first sight. But let's be clear, there was no love on plantations. These slaves weren't given the luxury of humanity, let alone love. Also, she was stolen and enslaved at 11. And I think she met him when she was 16. They got officially married when Tom Jackson was 38 to her 16 years old. So let's just think about that. Now, in Priscilla and Tom's case, they were legally married because Louisiana at the time was still a territory. So it was technically not illegal to be in an interracial marriage and or to marry a slave, because it technically wasn't a part of the Union yet. So it was like the weird gray area of our country that was still heavily under Spain and later France's control. For example, even now when you go to New Orleans, you can still feel the presence of those European colonizers. So their marriage is really important to this, because Black people weren't considered people. Even those who were free really couldn't build a lot of wealth or lives for themselves. But because Priscilla and Tom were married, she was entitled to his belongings, and that was supported by their union because it was legal. So, flash forward a bit, Tom Jackson falls deathly ill from whatever ailments one gets from being a slave owner. And Priscilla is there by his side because she literally has no choice, slavery, but also because they have children. At this point, they have 3 to be exact. And now, while Tom is on his deathbed, Priscilla gets a letter from Tom's wife that basically states that Priscilla and her children will become her property when Tom dies, and that the plantation and Tom's independent wealth cannot be given to his bastards, the heirs that were made out of wedlock. The biggest kicker of them all is that it was Priscilla's responsibility to deliver the wife's wishes as well as Tom's will to the courthouse, so the state would know Tom's final wishes and would then be able to figure out who was going to operate the abandoned plantation after his death. So, remember when I told you Priscilla could read and write and speak multiple languages? So, she changed the will and included herself and her children as the recipients to Tom's property, which was legal in the territory of Louisiana. So when he passed, Priscilla, my great-great-great-grandmother, got the land, the money, and the plantation. My family still lives on that land today. In fact, I probably spent every year of my life going back to family reunions on that exact red clay that Priscilla spent her whole life protecting for us, her bloodline. So, my great-great-great-grandmother was Hagar. She suffered unimaginable things to secure the prosperity of her bloodline, which makes me think about all of our legacies, our lineages. It makes me think about how many Sarahs I encounter in a week, day, matter of hours. Makes me wonder if they treat me differently if they knew I was a descendant of a divine being. Would they break the generational curse and set their families free if they knew they came from Sarah? Would they cure themselves from a generational passivity that's locked into their DNA? And I think it's like we must go back and comb through our history as a collective being and our immediate families and think, are you a descendant of Abraham? Does your aunt sound like a Sarah? Then ask yourself, what things do I not need to carry? What wrongs can we make right? Because the truth is, if oppressed people can inherit trauma, privileged people can inherit passivity and violence. But the good news is, we have the strength to heal, but it takes courage. Do you have the strength to fight for what's right?